For more than a year now, two very different versions of one shocking story have been at the center of an ongoing controversy. An incident that allegedly took place during a Daystar television executive retreat at Miramar Beach, Florida, back in 2021. The situation involves Jonathan and Suzy Lamb's 5-year-old daughter, who is often affectionately called Baby Lamb, and her uncle, Josh Brown. What happened that day has become one of the most talked about and divisive events in Christian media circles. It hasn't just fractured the Lamb family, one of the most well-known families in Christian broadcasting. It's also divided thousands of people online. Viewers, churchgoers, and longtime fans of Daystar have all taken sides, each convinced that their version of the truth is the real one. The case has sparked endless debates on social media, in podcasts, and even within faith-based communities that once looked to the Lamb family as role models. Now, before diving into the two conflicting accounts of what supposedly happened between Josh and Baby Lamb that day, there's an important new development that changes the entire picture. For the first time since the retreat, a non-family witness has come forward, someone who was actually there but isn't connected by blood or marriage to anyone involved. That witness is Sylvia Torres Gonzalez, a housekeeper who worked for the Lamb family at the time. She was present during that 2021 retreat and has now shared her account with the police. In her interview, which you'll soon hear more about, Sylvia gives what appears to be the first-hand description of events from someone completely outside the family circle. What makes her testimony even more compelling is that she doesn't seem to have any reason to lie. If anything, speaking up puts her at risk. In fact, according to the police transcript, Sylvia repeatedly expressed fear that telling the truth might cost her her job. She made it clear that she was terrified of losing her livelihood simply for coming forward with what she witnessed. Her courage in speaking out adds a whole new layer to this already heartbreaking and controversial story. Now let's walk through the two narratives that have been at the center of this emotional and highly publicized battle. According to Suzy Lamb, the day of the incident started like any other morning at the beach house. Suzy was downstairs with her young daughter, and Josh, who is married to Suzy's sister, was in the kitchen holding his 1-year-old son. At some point, Baby Lamb asked her mom if she could go swimming. Suzy agreed and told her to go upstairs to her room to change into her swimsuit. But then something deeply unsettling happened. Suzy says that Josh, still carrying his baby, immediately followed her 5-year-old daughter upstairs. Feeling uneasy and sensing something wasn't right, Suzy's instincts kicked in. She quickly ran to find her husband, Jonathan Lamb, and told him what was happening. Jonathan raced upstairs, and what he says he saw changed everything. According to Jonathan, he walked into his daughter's bedroom to find her naked, with Josh standing in the room. Shocked and furious, he immediately confronted his brother-in-law. Jonathan has since claimed that Josh didn't try to defend himself or explain anything. Instead, he just kept repeating the words, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," over and over again, as many as 50 times. The Lambs say that moment confirmed their worst fears. However, Joni Lambs, Jonathan's mother and the president of Daystar Television Network, tells a completely different version of the story. One that paints Josh not as a predator, but as an unfortunate victim of circumstance. According to Joni, Josh had gone into the room because his young son wanted something and had led him there. She claims Josh had no idea his niece had also gone into that same room to change clothes. Joni insists that what happened was an innocent misunderstanding, blown completely out of proportion. In December 2023, Joni publicly shared her account of the incident during an interview with podcaster Marcus Rogers. During that conversation, she strongly defended Josh and suggested that the situation had been twisted by emotions, assumptions, and family tension. Soon after, Jonathan and Suzy responded to her statements in a podcast of their own, directly disputing her version of events and accusing her of protecting Josh instead of protecting their daughter. One detail worth noting is that at the time Joni gave that interview, the investigative blog, The Roy's Report, had not yet revealed Josh Brown's name. Instead, the site referred to him anonymously as a family member. So when you listen to Joni's interview, you'll hear her refer to him in that vague way, avoiding his real name because it hadn't yet been made public. This heartbreaking clash between two narratives, one told by Suzy and Jonathan, and the other defended by Joni, has only deepened the mystery of what really happened that day at Miramar Beach. On one hand, there's a mother and father who believe something deeply wrong took place involving their little girl. On the other, there's a grandmother and network president who insists the situation was a tragic misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. Now, with a new witness stepping forward, the story is entering another chapter, one that could finally bring new clarity or raise even more questions about what truly happened between Josh Brown and baby Lamb during that fateful family retreat.
We're at the beach, and on this particular day, my grandson was talking about his city view because they're the two older grandchildren. Mm-hmm. They were up in a room. It was a long bunk room, and there was a bunk bed on one side, and then there was another bunk bed on the other side. And so my grandson was talking about his sister had the beach view, and he had the city view. And so who they're calling Pete heard my grandson talking and said, "Oh, I like the city view." Because everybody else was saying they like the beach view. Personally, I like the beach view. And so he said Pete was holding his 1-year-old child. And he said to my grandson, "Well, show me your city view." So they went up the steps. I was in the room, heard this, and went up the steps and proceeded to look out the window to see the beach view and then to see the city view. And at some point, my granddaughter was up there on her side of the room and put her bathing suit on. Mm-hmm. Well, downstairs, Suzy said to my son, "Go check on." I remember thinking that's kind of weird, and the way she said it. And so my son went running up the stairs, and when he did, he saw that his daughter was putting on the bathing suit, and Pete was standing there holding a 1-year-old baby, and my 8-year-old grandson was there, and they were looking out the window at the city view. Well, Jonathan says, "What are you doing up here? She's putting her bathing suit on." Well, Pete turns around and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and comes downstairs. And it was just weird the way the whole thing went down.
I have no words. Where do you begin? Everything is a lie. Everything is a lie. How would I just know? If he was on the 3rd floor, how would I just know to tell Jonathan to go up there? She was not anywhere.
So, as you can probably tell by now, there are two completely different stories about what really happened that day, and they couldn't be more opposite. On one hand, you have Joni Lambs' version of events, which paints the situation as a misunderstanding. On the other, you have Jonathan and Suzy's version, which suggests something far more serious happened between their daughter and Josh. And according to Suzy, Joni wasn't even anywhere near the part of the house where the incident supposedly took place. Suzy claims Joni was down in the basement, while everything happened upstairs, meaning Joni couldn't possibly have seen anything with her own eyes. That raises a huge question. Whose story is actually true? Was Joni repeating what she wanted to believe, or was she covering for someone? Or are Jonathan and Suzy's memories of that day clouded by emotion and fear? No one really knows for sure, but that's where a brand new voice enters the picture, someone who might finally help fill in some of the blanks. Her name is Sylvia Torres Gonzalez, and she's not a family member or part of the Daystar leadership circle. She was simply the Lamb family's cleaning lady, someone who worked quietly in the background and happened to be at the retreat when everything unfolded. Now, Sylvia's testimony is incredibly important for one reason. She's the first person outside the Lamb family to describe what she saw and heard that week. Her story doesn't come from second-hand gossip or emotional reactions. It comes straight from her own experience. And according to her, what she witnessed not only supports parts of Suzy and Jonathan's version of events, but also reveals another disturbing encounter between Josh and baby Lamb that no one had talked about publicly before. This interview with Sylvia took place on February 4, 2025, as part of an ongoing investigation by the Colleyville, Texas Police Department into the allegations of abuse involving baby Lamb. The interview was conducted by Detective Nick Garcia, and an interpreter was present in the room to help Sylvia express herself clearly in Spanish. According to police notes obtained by the Roy's report, Sylvia does speak some English, but told officers she would feel much more comfortable speaking in Spanish. This wasn't just about language, it was about making sure she could tell her story fully, without misunderstanding or pressure. She wanted every word, every detail, and every emotion to be understood exactly as she meant it. In her interview, Sylvia didn't just talk about the 2021 retreat, she also revealed another incident involving Josh and the young girl, something that, up until now, had not been part of the public record. Her testimony reportedly describes moments that made her uncomfortable, things that she said didn't seem right, and interactions she couldn't ignore. And even though she admitted she was afraid to speak up, worried that doing so could cost her her job, she chose to tell the truth anyway. This act of bravery is worth noting. Sylvia is a working-class woman, an employee with no influence or public platform, standing up to a powerful and well-known family. By speaking out, she risked losing her livelihood, her reputation, and even her peace of mind. But she still came forward because, in her words, she couldn't stay quiet about what she saw. Despite the courage it took for Sylvia to share her story, the Colleyville police investigation was officially closed in March 2025, just a month after her interview. Authorities said they didn't have enough evidence to press charges. However, the case hasn't been completely shut forever. According to officials, if Baby Lamb ever decides to speak directly about what happened, something known in legal terms as an outcry statement, the investigation could be reopened immediately. So far, the only person Baby Lamb has reportedly told about the alleged abuse is her mother, Suzy. Beyond that, she hasn't spoken to police, counselors, or investigators about it in her own words. For now, that leaves everyone waiting for clarity, waiting for truth, and waiting for justice, whichever way it may fall. As we move into the next part of this story, you'll hear portions of the interview between Sylvia Gonzalez and Detective Nick Garcia, with the interpreter translating her words. What she says might not just shed light on the Miramar Beach retreat. It might completely reshape how people understand everything that's happened between Josh, Baby Lamb, and the rest of the Lamb family since that fateful day. But for the first time, a voice outside the family is stepping into the conversation, and what she has to say could change everything. The interview begins in a small police office in Colleyville, Texas. You can hear the faint hum of a recorder turning on, a translator settling into her chair, and the nervous voice of Sylvia Torres Gonzalez, the longtime cleaning lady for the Lamb family. She's clearly anxious. There's a mix of Spanish and English, and even a few light-hearted moments where she laughs nervously to ease the tension. "Yo pensaba que hablaba español," she says with a shy smile. "I thought you spoke Spanish." Someone in the room jokes, calling her coconut, saying it's because she's brown on the outside but white on the inside. Sylvia laughs politely, but you can tell she's tense. She takes a deep breath. Detective Nick Garcia gently starts the conversation. He tells her they're just going to talk about what she remembers. He assures her that she's not in trouble. He just wants to understand what she saw during the Daystar retreat in Florida. But Sylvia's first question cuts straight to her fear. "Everything I say here," she asks nervously, "will my boss find out about it?" "Because I work for Joni, Jonathan's mother-in-law, Becca's mom. If she finds out I talk to you, I might lose my job." Her voice cracks when she says it. That job is all she has, and she's terrified of losing it. "It's my only job," she adds softly. "If I lose it, I don't know what I'll do." Garcia reassures her that she's safe and asks if it's okay to go over what he's been told so far. Sylvia nods. He says, "Jonathan told me that you once saw Joshua Brown, kissing the little girl." Sylvia takes a long breath and looks down. "Ay, Dios mío," she mutters. "I really hope I don't get in trouble for this. I love those girls so much, both of them, and I don't want to hurt anyone." She pauses for a moment, thinking carefully about her words. "You know," she says slowly, "sometimes when you've lived through things, you can feel when something isn't right. I don't know if that's just the way he was with her, but one time, long ago, before the beach trip, I saw something that made me uncomfortable." Sylvia explains that she was washing dishes at Joni's house one afternoon when Josh and his wife arrived with the little girl. The child was very young then, maybe 3 or 4. "They had been swimming," Sylvia says, "and I remember him giving her a lot of kisses. Not on the mouth, but here." She touches her cheek. Too many, very close, too affectionate. I'm Hispanic, and in our culture, that kind of affection with children like that, it's not normal. Maybe it's their culture, I don't know. But it felt wrong to me. Then Sylvia grows quieter. That wasn't the only time, she says. There was another moment, during the trip in Florida. I was there. I saw what happened that day. She closes her eyes, trying to remember everything clearly. I was in the kitchen, she says, standing near the big table. The stairs were over there. Everyone had already finished breakfast except Josh. I was waiting for him to eat so I could start cleaning. He came down late, holding his baby boy. She remembers that morning clearly because she was growing impatient. She couldn't start her chores until everyone was done eating. I think my boss, Joni, had already gone downstairs to the basement, she says. I'm not sure, but Suzy, the girl's mother, was definitely sitting nearby. The little girl asked her mum if she could go swimming. Suzy said yes and told her to go upstairs and change. Sylvia remembers that moment clearly. Then, she says, Josh went upstairs right after her. He was still carrying his baby. And I remember thinking, oh no, not again. A few minutes later, Sylvia heard Suzy scream from the kitchen, Jonathan. It startled me, Sylvia says. She sounded scared. She ran toward her bedroom, and then Jonathan jumped up and ran up the stairs so fast. I didn't know what was going on. I just froze. A short time later, Jonathan came back down, followed by Josh. Sylvia remembers that Josh kept saying the same thing over and over again. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She and her friend, another housekeeper who was there, exchanged worried looks. We didn't know what had happened, she explains. We just knew something was very wrong. Later that evening, Becca, the girl's aunt, told Sylvia's friend not to let the children out of their sight and to sleep in the same room with them that night. Sylvia continues describing another day at the retreat. She had been asked to watch the children while the adults went out for a walk. That never happened before, she says. They never left the kids with me. But that day, they did. While the kids were swimming, Becca's son, Israel, suddenly jumped out of the water and said something that caught Sylvia off guard. He said, guess what? They found her up there with Josh. Sylvia says she tried to stay calm and told the boy maybe they were just changing clothes. But deep down, she felt uneasy. I think he knew more than anyone else, she says. He was upstairs too. I always felt like God kept putting his name in my mind. Israel, Israel, Israel. Like maybe what he saw was the key to everything. She says she told her friend that someone needed to speak up about what Israel had said, but they were both scared. I didn't want to lose my job, Sylvia admits. I've worked there since 2002. The Lambs have been good to me. I love them. I've seen those girls grow up. It hurts me to talk about this, but I have to tell the truth. Her husband, she says, encouraged her to be honest, even if it costs her job. He told me, the truth will set you free. And I know he's right. I'm doing this for the little girl, because I went through something like this myself, my daughter too. So I can't stay quiet. She tells Detective Garcia she's worried about what will happen when Joni asks if she spoke to the police. If she asks what happened, what should I say? She asks quietly. The interpreter advises her to simply say she doesn't speak much English or that she can't talk about it. Sylvia nods, still nervous but relieved to have told her story. She ends the interview with a heavy sigh, saying she just hopes she doesn't get fired. If they let me go, she says, maybe it's time to retire. I'm 62. I could move back to Mexico with my husband. But I just want to do what's right before God. As the interview wraps up, the detective thanks her sincerely. Gracias, señora González, he says. Thank you for being brave. Sylvia smiles faintly, wipes her eyes, and whispers, La verdad te hace libre. The truth makes you free. Then she stands, thanks everyone again, and quietly leaves the room, unsure of what will happen next, but certain that she's finally done what her conscience demanded.